All right, today what I want to talk about is solving the problem that so many of you are experiencing with your athletes, whether you're a mindset coach, whether you're a sports coach, a mental performance coach. So often we want to improve our athletes' mental game, our clients' mental game, because we see this problem in front of us, right? We see that people are struggling. Either they're not consistent, or they're not mentally tough enough, or they don't know how to bounce back from mistakes, whatever it is, and we try to solve it, right? Maybe we Google it. Maybe we're reading all the books. Maybe we try things at practice or in our sessions, and we still aren't exactly sure what is working. Now, I'm going to share with you our positive performance 6-step framework, and I'm going to walk you through the 6 steps that really, if you do these 6 steps, they are the only steps that you need, at least in the beginning. Now, if you're working with more elite athletes, potentially you need something else, but they always need this base framework, this base foundation. But before I talk to you about the 6 steps, what I really want you to understand, and this is true for all of our clients, all of our students, this is what we teach. If you are a person that is training, leading, influencing other people and their mind, by golly, you better be working on your own mind. This is the most important piece for a couple of reasons. I believe that when people are asking us to work on our own mindset, it is obvious or there's just something missing if they're not doing it themselves. I think this is really, really important. And then I think for you, you can feel it if there's a disconnect. If anything that you're teaching is not aligned with what you're saying, sorry, anything that you're teaching is not aligned with what you're actually doing, it can feel a little off. And you may not be full in teaching it, really living it, really passionate about it if you're not doing it yourself. There's like a little voice in your head that sort of like pulls you back. And so this is why we spend an entire month sitting in the student chair in our certification program. Before you ever learn to coach somebody else, you coach yourself, you learn to get coached, and you really work on your own mindset. So that's sort of the first step. And I think that that's really, really important before we even get to the framework, because I know when we are adults and we're coaches and we're leading other people, we always think about how they can improve. And that's great. There's lots of things you can do to help them improve, but none of it means anything if you're not doing the work yourself. And it doesn't mean we can't get off track. There's no shame or judgment in this. I get off track all the time. But we come back to what we know works and we work on our own mindset first, always. Okay? Deal? All right. So here's the 6 steps. So I'm going to walk you through each one and I'm going to talk to you a little bit what it can look like and why it's important. Now, again, the reason that this is so important is because we often overcomplicate any of our work with clients or students or athletes. We think they need all million different things to improve, and really most people need these 6 steps, these 6 pieces in their mental training framework. Really, even if they got one, it could drastically improve their performance. It could drastically improve their life. So I have seen that most of the time we give people too much. We try too many different things. We get overwhelmed and overcomplicated ourselves and don't know where to start. And this is why I'm sharing this, is because I believe that when coaches stick to these 6 steps, they're more successful, their athletes feel safer in the process, and they get those results, which you can always build on later. But these are really the foundational pieces, okay? So the first thing is how the brain works. Now, I don't think that, depending on their age, I don't think that every athlete needs to understand all the psychology and all the neurology and, all the stuff behind it. But they do need to understand a little bit about how the human brain works, mostly so that they can understand that their human brain really works like everybody else's human brain. Because the problem is that when people start struggling, they think they're so unique. They think they're the only ones that have ever struggled with this. They think they're the only ones that have a challenge with confidence. And so when we talk about how the human brain works, people feel safe. They feel normal. They can kind of calm down and say like, oh, okay, well, if this is how the human brain works and this is how my brain is working, then there's obviously ways around this, and it's not my fault. So it normalizes their struggle in a way that makes them feel not alone. You guys, this step alone is huge. When I used to go in and work with athletic departments and big universities, I'd go in and work with a team. And I can say that the athletes, I mean, just talking about how the brain works and looking around and being like, oh, I'm not the only one that struggles with this is gold. Okay. So, how the brain works would be step number one. Step number two would be how we teach it at Positive Performance and in our Mindset Coach Academy is visualization and imagery. But really, this piece is any kind of deep thought work. Because what we all need to understand is that we can do all the physical training that we want, and we will never outperform our beliefs. Let me say that again. We will never outperform our beliefs. So if you have thoughts that aren't lining up with how you want to perform or how you want to live or how you want to experience the world, you will always be limited by those thoughts. Okay. So any kind of thought work, we do visualization and imagery. There's a couple other tools that we teach that help people reframe their thoughts. This could also be some sort of mindfulness exercise. But essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to program the subconscious because we will never outperform our thoughts and our beliefs about ourselves. Okay. So that's step number two. Step number three is where we bring in things like the Braver, which if you're familiar with our company, you know, we teach a pre-practice routine that implements so many mental training tools into one 5-minute routine. It's called the Braver. This is where you would have some sort of pre-practice routine. Now, again, the Braver is what we teach. It's a 5-step process. They can use it for pre-practice, pre-game, post-game, anytime in their life, going into tests, going into interviews. But this is step 3, and this would be a pre-practice mental routine. I should say that, mental routine. Because so often, and if you've coached, you know this, so often we get into practice and we're like, going a million miles an hour, going to school and class and jobs and all the stuff. And then we get into practice and we have a physical warm up, but we're not quite there mentally, or we watch our athletes not be quite there mentally. And it's like, we need that transition. We need to get our brain focused on the task at hand. And we're going to be so much more productive in those 2 hours if we take the time to get our brain ready to perform, ready to compete. Now, with our Braver, there's a lot of different components to it. They're simple, but they all have a purpose. Like we talk about affirmations, we do visualization in the Braver. Then we can use our reset word in competition. I digress. But it doesn't have to be complicated. We just need to get our brain on board. So that's step number 3, some sort of pre-practice mental routine. And I hope as you're hearing these steps, you can see how each one has such extreme value that even if you didn't teach all 6 and you just taught one, so many athletes would get such a benefit from just one of these tools. Okay. Step 4 in our 6-part framework that we teach at Positive Performance is pre-competition routines. So often, athletes come to me, they come to any of our certified coaches, and they're inconsistent. That's the problem, is inconsistency. But how many of them are inconsistent in their preparation? So many. So many of them maybe are on their phones or they're talking to people before competition. And it's like willy-nilly. You know, I was a basketball player. So I will say so many athletes wait until their first couple minutes of the game. If the ball goes in the basket, great. They're good at basketball that day. If they miss, they're not good. And so we really need to teach them consistent routines. And this is really the low-hanging fruit, right? Because it's not that difficult to come up with a pre-competition routine. It takes some time, it takes some effort, and it also takes some awareness, which is a really fun process for athletes because what I always say is I'm an expert in mental training, but you're an expert in you. So let's think about what has worked in the past. Most athletes have patterns. You know, for example, I was the kind of athlete that I felt really pumped up for big games. And sometimes it was a little bit harder for me in games that, didn't mean that much, or we were expected to blow the other team out. So I need to be aware of those patterns recognize where I need to be mentally. And we have a whole process that we take them through that teaches them the research behind it, where they need to be mentally. And then this is the key, the tools to get themselves there every single game or competition, regardless of the competition, regardless of how they're feeling, regardless of whether it's a home game or away game, regardless of anything else. They have a consistent routine that they can go back to always to get that consistent results. Consistent routines lead to consistent results. So pre-competition routines is step 4. Step 5, in competition reset routines. So for us, we often call this a reset routine or a mistake ritual. But essentially, imagine as a coach or as a parent or as a teammate or someone that has watched sports, you have absolutely seen someone spiral after a mistake, right? We all have. And oftentimes, our fight or flight response takes over in those moments if we haven't practiced something ahead of time. What we really want athletes to be able to do is make a mistake because we know they're going to happen. So we might as well prepare for them. Have something to go back to in those moments so that their brain doesn't take off. I will say goes on the negative train, right? It just takes off, and then that can spiral into so many other things within that competition. Whereas if we just had something in that moment, and that's what we teach, in that moment to sort of rein in our thoughts and our emotions and get back to being in the present moment so that they can perform, is gold. Now, we teach this reset routine, and it plays into pre-practice routines, pre-competition routines, and it's something that they can go back to, not just in mistakes, but anytime they need to reset. And this is really, really simple and hugely powerful. And I will also say, when teams do this together, it becomes a thing. Everybody knows their reset ritual. Sometimes they have one as a team. It can be a really fun thing. Again, something that you could implement. In fact, we have a Mistake Ritual Magic, which is our mini course that you can go through, that if you just implemented this, you would see an enormous amount of change in your athletes, because so much of competition and performance comes down to how do we respond when things don't go our way, because we know that's going to happen. So step 5 is in competition reset routines. Step 6 in our positive performance 6-step framework is post-competition routines. Now, you guys, this is something that is so simple and so many people miss it. After competition, so many athletes and even coaches, maybe, if they win, they feel good. If they lose, they feel bad. If they play well or get a lot of playing time, they feel good. If they rode the bench, they feel bad, right? And this is so unproductive. This is like such a wasted opportunity to really improve, okay? To really look at where we can get better. If we don't have a post-competition routine, routine, something that they can go back to. We even have a worksheet, but they can do it in a journal. It's something that we teach that helps them critique their performance. What went well, what didn't go well, what can they do better next time, without criticizing themselves as an athlete, as a human. We want to remove the emotions and teach them to evaluate, teach them to coach themselves and get in that place where they can look objectively at what went well and what didn't go well so they can improve. This is so huge. This is such a life skill, and it's something that so many of us miss. Okay, so let me review the 6-step framework. Again, I mentioned as coaches and leaders, we have to be practicing what we preach. Okay, so we talked about that. Here's the 6 steps, how the brain works so they don't feel alone in their struggles. Visualization and imagery. You cannot outperform your beliefs about yourself. Pre-practice mental routines. We have to get people mentally ready to practice. Pre-competition routines. We have to know how to get ourselves in the right mental state to perform at our best. Consistent results come from consistent preparation. In competition reset routines or mistake rituals, how do we recover from mistakes? Hugely important. And finally, post-competition routines. There is an opportunity to improve without emotions after every single competition. Take that. That is a huge missed opportunity if you're not. All right. That is our 6-step framework. If you are interested in studying with us, going deeper into each one of these things, learning how to teach it, learning how to coach, learning how to build a mental training, mindset coaching business, check out Positive Performance and the Mindset Coach Academy certification. I'll put the link below. I'll see you on the other side.